Shavua Tov and Chag Yerushalayim Sameach to everyone. And I hope everyone is doing well. We are in Perek Bet of Sefer Nechemia. And if you recall last week, we read through Perek Aleph. Perek Aleph was really all about the tefillah that Nechemia, davened and prayed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu after he had heard from those who came to visit him from Yehuda, from Yerushalayim, to tell him that things are just not going well for the Jewish people in Eretz Israel and in Yerushalayim, right? So he prays to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he asks for forgiveness for all the sins that they might have done, both in the Galut, in diaspora, and also in Eretz Israel, because he realizes that everything that happens to the nation of Israel as a whole is mamash me'ashamayim. And just to relate to today's Yom Yerushalayim, as everyone knows, so many people, hundreds of thousands of people, and as we can all see from pictures, both religious and non-religious, that are visiting and dancing in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. That's also Me'akadosh Baruch Hu. So that's really a wonderful thing. So he ended up saying that he's very close to the king of Persia, and that's kind of a hint to the beginning of our new Perek Bet. So let's just jump right in. He heard what was going on, and he is a man of action. Nechemia wants to do something about it. He wants to help the Jewish people. He wants to see if there's anything that he can do in order to make Jewish life in Israel and Jerusalem better for Am Yisrael. He doesn't know exactly what's going on because he's not there. He's far away. There's no cameras, no videos, no WhatsApps. He doesn't really know what's going on. He heard that it's not going well for Am Yisrael. So the first pasuk, Perek Bet, pasuk Aleph, starts in the reign of the 20th year of Artaxshasta. Vayhi bechodesh Nisan, chodesh Nisan, shnat 20 leArtaxshasta hamelech, yain lefanav, vayisa et hayain, vayitna lamelech, velo haytira lefanav. So the one who's speaking is Nechemia. Nechemia is speaking, and he says, one day in the month of Nisan, 20th year of Artaxshasta, this is 13 years after Ezra already came to Eretz Israel. So he comes to the palace, and the Persian king, is dining, enjoying himself with some wine and some nice jazz music. And he comes to him, and he is the cupbearer. He is the Sara Mashke, right? We made we showed that he's very important to the king of Artaxshasta. And he comes and he gives him more wine. He's a very trusted minister. The people who give wine to the king must be very, very trusted because he's putting the life in the hands of his ministers. And I guess he didn't look very good, Nechemia, when he approached Artaxshasta. The words used in the pasuk is after he gives wine to the king, va'isa hayain va'itna lamelech, when I helped and I poured another drink for the king, it says, velo hayiti ra lefanav. A literal translation means, and I wasn't in a bad state in front of him. Velo hayiti ra lefanav. And when we read the continuation of the psukim, we'll see that he actually was. He did look bad. He didn't look himself. So this word velo hayiti ra lefanav, I didn't not look good in front of the king, doesn't fit. The word velo should be taken out, right? It should say vayitna lamelech hayiti ra lefanav. I wasn't doing so well. And therefore, a lot of I just did a search on the internet to find translations of different translations of the book of Nechemia, not translations that were written by people, but rather known translations, the Pshita and other the different translations of the Bible, and a lot of them just take out the word lo, and they all just say he wasn't looking good. He wasn't looking good, and that's why, as we'll see from the next couple of psukim, the king says, "Yo, Nechemia, you don't look good. What's going on?" Right? But I think we should leave the word velo hayiti ra lefanav, because I think what the psukim are trying to teach us is that anytime Nechemia would see the king, he was always at his best. He was always cheerful. He was always in good spirits. So velo hayiti ra lefanav means b'derech klal. Usually, I was always at my best. I never looked sad. I never looked that something was troubling me in front of the king. You don't go to the king and have a sourpuss, face on, because it's the king of Persia. His word is he just says, off, cut off with his head. That's it. It's done. So I think the psukim are trying to tell us that Nechemia is a very good minister. He knows how to act. He knows how to actually be there for the king. And the king has never seen him. The king has never seen him in bad spirits. And that's why the next pasuk makes sense. Pasuk bet says, Vayomer li hamelech. The king then says, Madua panecha ra'im. Why do you look sad? I've never seen you sad. And that's where the velo hayitira lefanav. I've never seen you sad before. And seeing you distressed, seeing you not in good spirits, a little sad, is standing out. So the king himself asks him, why do you look this way? I mean, you're not sick. Ve'ata eincha chole, you're not sick. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I mean, if you were sick, you wouldn't be close to the king, because anybody who surrounds the king has to be top-notch health, because the king can't get sick, right? Even then, they knew viruses are contagious. So he asks him, you're not sick. What's going on? Enze, he continues in Pasuk Bet, Enze ki'im ro'a lev, va'ira harbe me'od. Right? The king asks, Nechemia, why are you looking so sad? You don't look sick to me, so it must be that you're unhappy. And I'm startled about that. Now, why would the king be startled if he sees Nechemia unhappy? Why would the king be startled? Why would it matter to the king? I mean, he's the king. He can tell his ministers, I don't care if you're happy, if you're sad, you do your job. I don't care what your state of mind is in. Do your job. Because, as we mentioned before, Nechemia is the cupbearer. He's in charge of checking to make sure there's no poisons. And then I can guess that the king of Persia was, the death threats are probably all the time. I mean, if we know that our prime minister received a couple of death threats, and many prime ministers in previous administrations received death threats, and that's just little Israel. We're talking about one of the biggest nations in the world at the time, superpowers in the world, and I'm sure he got many death threats. So he's actually being fearful now that Nechemia doesn't look good. I mean, what's the cause of it? Is it going to affect your ability to make sure that my wine is okay? Because usually I assume they drink the wine a little bit before they give it to the king to make sure that it's not poisonous. So the king is startled because he's taken aback. I mean, if Nechemia, I've never seen you this way. Maybe you were paid to poison me. Who knows what's going on? I mean, that's what's really happening here. We got to jump into like the Hollywood scene where, he's having he's having a party and he's enjoying himself, and enters Nechemia, the most trusted minister who was in charge of giving him, and he doesn't look good. And he's like really startled, like what's going on here? So the first thing that Nechemia has to do is first calm the king down, right? I mean, don't worry, I'm okay. And that's what he does. In Pasuk Gimel, he says, Va'omar lamelech, Leolam Hamelech Leolam Yichrye. Right? He says to him, after he asks, what's going on with you? He says to him, may your majesty, the king, live forever. Telling him basically, don't worry, I'm okay. I know how to do my job. Nothing's going to happen to you. I'm okay. I'm not, there's nothing wrong with my heart. There's nothing wrong with who I am. I wasn't paid to poison you. I want you to live forever. That's my goal. I'm your trusted minister. And immediately I can just see, relief probably on the face of the king. And then so the king then asks, okay, I assume so what's going on? I mean, obviously something's wrong with you. I've never seen it this way. And then he answers. And Nechemia finally answers and tells him, Madua lo yiru panai asher ha'ir Beit kivrot avotai chariva ush'area uklu ba'esh. He says to him in Pasuk at the Pasuk Gimel, he says, I'm able to keep from being sad. But it's hard for me. Meaning, it's not a sickness. It's not something that anybody did, but rather my city. It's my back home, where I come from. My city, where my ancestors are buried. It's in ruins. It's hard for me to sleep at night when I know that my ancestors, my friends, family, where I come from is in ruins. and its gates are been destroyed with fire. That's exactly what he was told by those Judeans who came to visit him beforehand, not long ago. And he tells the king that's why I'm sad. I'm not sad, God forbid, because anything's wrong with me and I'm a top notch. I can do my job perfectly, but I'm sad since you already asked about what's going back home where I live. But notice what he doesn't mention. What does he not mention? He doesn't mention Yerushalayim. He doesn't say the name Yerushalayim. How fitting is it that we're talking about Yerushalayim? He says, Kivrot avotai chariva u'sh'area u'klu ba'esh. When today it's the exact opposite. When today there's passion and love for Yerushalayim and everyone's singing Yerushalayim. But here Nechemia doesn't mention Yerushalayim. He just says, Beit Kivrot avotai chariva u'sh'area, the gates. So we're obviously talking about Yerushalayim. U'klu ba'esh. They're destroyed by fire. And I asked myself, why not mention Yerushalayim? Why does he not just say Jerusalem is my home? Why is he not saying that? And the reason is because I think Nechemia doesn't want to. He wants to move from a political sphere to a more personal level. He wants to appeal to the personality that he has towards the king. He wants the king to understand that he doesn't want to go build up Jerusalem as a city, take autonomy. He just wants to go back to his hometown. And the king might have a soft spot for that. And so he's very, very, he's a politician, very, very good politician. Instead of talking about Jerusalem, which might cause the king to say, don't, you're my minister, you're my cupbearer, don't start bringing politics into the mix. But, your hometown, wow, right? As many of us know, sometimes when we have a doctor that takes care of us for a long time, or a helper, or somebody who's with us, for a while, we become attached to that person. We ask personal questions, and when it's the personal, you connect more, and that's what he's doing. He's connecting to the king. He's telling the king, I have a personal problem. Maybe you could help me with that. That's kind of what he's hinting to. So he's very, very smart. He says, he wants to talk about the personal level, not the political move that he really has, that he wants to do. He wants to go and build up Jerusalem, Yerushalayim Ira Kodesh, but he doesn't want the king first thing to hear that I want to build up another city, my city, the city of the Jews. He doesn't want to remind him that, so he says, my hometown. So immediately the king answers in Pasuk Dalet, and he says, Vayomer li HaMelech, as the speaker is Nechemia, and the king told me, Al ma ze ata mevakesh. Okay, seriously, what are you asking for? I mean, we're talking about a smart king. We're not talking about, a king that you can pull a fast one on, right? We're talking about a king that rules over hundreds and, many, the previous king, Achashverosh, ruled 127, provinces. So this one, Achashverosh, inherited all that and probably rules even more than that. So he's a smart king. He knows that if his trusted minister starts bringing his hometown and tells how he's sad that everything's in ruin, he knows that there's an ask that is coming. Right? Okay, so what do you really want? What do you want me to help you with? Right? You're my trusted, I like you, I'm with you a lot, my life is in your hands, I want to help you out. So he says, Ma tam bevakesh, what are you asking for? So the first thing Nechemia does, that he tells us, he says, Va'etpalel el Elohei hashamayim. I prayed to my God. Pray to my God. So there are two messages that Nechemia is giving here. On the one hand, he's saying to the message to the king is like, I'm going to pray to the God of Israel, of the province Israel, because don't forget, if you recall, one of the reasons why Cyrus, the first guy, wanted to give the license to the Jewish people to go ahead and build the second Beit Mikdash. And if you recall, we spoke about it at length. We said, because he wanted to find favor in the gods of Israel, because in Koresh's mind, in the Persian Empire's, philosophy, it's still paganism, but there are gods that rule different areas. And one of the things that Koresh wanted, if you remember, is he wanted to find favor in the gods of Israel. And that's why he allowed Ezra. That's why he allowed Shavei Tzion to go back, because he wanted the help of the gods of Israel to help him rule. And here, in a way, it could be that the first thing he says after the king, the Persian king, Artaxerxes, says, what can I do for you? He first says, I'm going to pray to my God, hinting to Artaxerxes that when I come back and give you my ask, when I demand or ask something of you, know that my God, the God of Israel, heard about it, and if you grant me the request, he will be helping you like he helped your ancestor Koresh. So that's a very smart move as far as Nechemia is concerned, right? He's always thinking ahead. He's thinking ahead exactly what is next. He's a chess player. He's thinking ahead what to move in order to make sure that he gets what he needs from Artaxerxes, right? He's close to him. He finds favor in him, and he knows to pinpoint which words to use, not to ignite the wrong parts of the king, right? To bring forward the questions of, why do you want to build up Jerusalem for? What's your agenda? Instead, he talks about his hometown, kind of like to bring in the personal aspect. And he talks about his own God. I'm praying to my God. It moves me. It's important, hinting that, my God in Israel might help you out as well. He's very, very smart. And then he gives his ask. And then he says, okay, now it's time to ask in Pasuk Hey, right? He says, so I answered the king after I prayed, and I made sure that he knew that I would pray to my God. Im ala melech tov, ve'im yitav avdecha lefanecha, asher tishlacheni el Yehuda, el ir kivrot avotai ve'evnena. He says, if your majesty is pleased and is willing to grant me my request. In the background, don't forget, I mentioned this to my God, the God of Israel, so he knows about this. He says, let me go to the land of Judah. Again, he doesn't say Jerusalem, he just says the land of Judah, which is a very big place, not anything specific, to the city where my ancestors are buried. Again, very, very personal, so that I can rebuild the city. Meaning, as far as what Artaxerxes might be hearing, is my trusted minister wants to go back and rebuild his home. It's in ruins. Maybe the Babylonians never, ruined it, and maybe it was just never built up. And I care. I want to give vacation. I would like to give my minister some vacation to go back home and rebuild and reignite with his family, and maybe build the walls of where he lived. So it could be nice for him. So he's at peace. So he can go back to me and be the good minister that I need him to be. Very, very intelligent and very smart. Again, he doesn't mention Yerushalayim at all. But if you notice the first part of the pasuk. Does it ring a bell? What is that? Kind of
Esther.
like Esther, exactly.
Sounds like Esther.
Exactly, Esther. So the parallel, the whole connection, we mentioned this before, a little bit with Ezra, also with Nechemia, that the reason why there's the language is similar to Esther, because as far as Nechemia is concerned, his mission is to save the Jewish people. He's masking it by saying, I need to go back home and build my, just do a shiputz to my home. But really, he wants to rebuild the place where the Jews can live at peace. That's his agenda. So the idea of taking or borrowing the style from Esther is because he really feels that he's that man who needs to save Am Yisrael, and he's similar to Esther. Esther was a queen very close to the king of Achashverosh, and Nechemia might not be a king, but an important minister who serves the drink to the king, and in a way is the closest thing a king could ever have, protects his life, and he also wants to save the Jewish people. And that's the language is similar, so that we, the reader, understand what really is going on here. He wants to go ahead and save Am Yisrael. He wants to rebuild Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh. Couldn't be a better day to discuss this. He wants to ve'evnena. We say uvnei Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh. That's what Nechemia wants to do. He wants to build Yerushalayim, not his home, not his hometown, but the home of Am Yisrael, the place where God has his own home. Okay, so everything is understood until now, right? The king knows what's going on, and Nechemia knows what's going on, even though Nechemia has bigger plans. So now it's time for the king to answer. Okay, you just requested to go back to your hometown and rebuild Jerusalem. Ad matai יהיה מהלך ומתי תשוב. ויטב לפני המלך, וישלחני ויתנה לו זמן. So Pasuk Vav basically says that the king says, and as he's sitting with the empress, or Hashegal, Shegal means one of the important women, or possibly the queen. I looked up the word Shegal throughout our texts and in different places, and it really means the important woman or the queen. So obviously there is this woman sitting right next to him. Okay, the Shegal was sitting next to him. And then the king asks, okay, I get it. You want to leave, you want to, go back to your hometown and kind of like do a shiputz and everything, but how long are you going to be away for? I mean, I need you. I mean, it's not easy for me to find trusted, ministers who are in charge of the, so they don't die, really, basically. So how long is there? I would like to approve your request, but I need to know how long you're going to be for. So the pasuk doesn't tell us. It just says, "Vayitab lifnei hamelech vayishlacheni vayitna lo." When I gave him some time, I gave him a time frame where I'll be gone. Vayitab ve'anei hamelech. He accepted. He said, "I'll be gone for a certain amount of time." I told him, and it was okay by him, and he approved my request. Right. So just to have an interesting aspect, this whole Hashegal Yoshevet Etzlo. I asked myself a couple of questions. Hashegal, why is it important for us to know that the queen is there or the more important woman is there? Didn't really understand why it's there. So it could be one possibility is the Persians were very advanced, more than the Babylonians, more than the Assyrians, and also more than the Romans. As we'll see, they were a culture that were very advanced. We see that they're different, right? They're the only ones who actually gave us the license to go ahead and build, and Koresh wanted to find favor, and so does Artaxerxes, and Daryavesh also wanted to as well. So they're a little bit different. They're not the same, mold. They're a special mold. Achashverosh married a Jewish, not that he knew she was Jewish, but and he brought her in. So they're very different. So it means that possibly women had some kind of position in the government, in the high courts. It could be that he was sitting next to her because maybe they were going through piskei din, maybe they were going through maybe there was some kind of position that she held, and it was important for her to hear and also to approve the request. Could be. What possibility? Not sure I agree so much with that possibility, but definitely could be, just knowing how the Persian Empire is a little bit different. They work differently than other empires during their time. Another possibility is, and this I thought long and hard before I was going to present it to you, but it makes more sense to me knowing a little bit history of how these kings lived. If you remember, Achashverosh loved women, right? So much so that the Midrash said, not the Midrash, the specific, the Ketuvim says that he slept with every single Betula, right? Before he was able to marry. I mean, that's a guy who loves women. I mean, he slept with many, many hundreds, who knows how many women he slept with. He loves women. That's one of the perks that you have when you're the Persian Empire, a Persian king. So I'm going to go out on a limb here, but I think it makes sense. So, the word shegal comes a little bit from the root, from lishkav, right? Lishkav, to sleep with. It could be that we're not talking about a place that Nechemia went to just to consult with the king and tell the king what's going on. It could be that the king was having an after party. He was enjoying himself. And that's the first pasuk. Pasuk Aleph says at the end of the pasuk, the middle of it says, Yain lefanav. He was drinking alcohol. It's a party, the after party, late at night. And he was there. And he had this woman next to him, and he was in good spirits. He was in good spirits. And I think that's the emphasis. And that's why if we go through up until that psukim, if we go through everything we just said, everything is just very smooth. Nechemia doesn't have any obstacles. The king is not asking any questions like, why do you want to go? He just says, okay, I understand. how long you could be away for. He's not putting up like, what do you want to do there? What's going to happen? Do you want to rule there? Do you want to leave your position? He's intoxicated. He's maybe drunk, possibly enjoying himself with the shegal there, this woman who's there. Because I don't really believe that women had any real true control. Although the reason why I said it was because of Esther, right? So we do know that women did have some type of influence on the men there, but not as an official position, but influence. Here too, maybe she had influence. Maybe is to tell us that, Nechemia came in the middle of this party and kind of like starts talking about his own town, and maybe she's listening in and she hears it, and who knows if they're half dressed, not dressed. But it seems logical to me, just thinking about Ahasuerus and what he went through, is that Nechemia took the opportunity that he's in this like state of bliss, of happiness, drunk with women, the shegal, right? Yoshevet etzlo, that he gets what he wants without any obstacle raised. It's very, very smooth, right? If I go back, he says, why do you look so sad? Why is the king of Persia even looking to see if somebody's sad? Because he's relaxed. He's enjoying himself. He's not in mode of king. If he was in mode of king, I don't think he would have cared how Nechemia looked, right? But he's relaxed. He's having the time of his life. And when he finally says, I want to go to my hometown, the king says, sure, no problem. Great. Just tell me how long you need to be until you come back. He's like not even thinking straight. But once he signs the document, as we know from Ahasuerus, and he signs it, that's it. Doesn't take it back. So maybe, that Nechemia is so skilled. He knows exactly when to go, how to do it, and what to do in order to get what he needs. It's planned ahead. I think Nechemia planned this whole thing ahead, right? He goes, Dafka b'chodesh Nisan. Why b'chodesh Nisan? Maybe he knew, what is chodesh Nisan? Nisan is the first of the month in the Persian Empire too. It's New Year's Eve, guys. It's January 1st. It's the most parties go on then, right? So he chose this specific date. Very smart character, Nechemia. So we're being introduced to a man who is not only close to God because he davened and prayed in Perek Aleph, but proving to us that he's very skilled. He's a very good politician. He knows when to go and what to get what he wants. And therefore, immediately in Pasuk Zayin, he ensures to get a signed document from Artaxerxes. No delays, immediately. That is uncanny. That is like pretty chutzpahdik for him to come in, make his demand, and get him to sign immediately. I mean, any king would raise an eyebrow. But here, he's relaxed. He's got the women in front of him. He's got the wine. It's an after party. It's New Year's Eve. He's enjoying himself. So Pasuk Zayin says that he says to the Melech, Va'omar lamelech, at that time, when I know I can get anything I want out of him, Im ala melech tov, igrot yitnuli al pachavot ever hanahar, asher ya'aviruni ad asher avo El Yehuda. He says, then I asked him, Nechemia is telling us, to grant me favor, giving me letters to the governor of the west of the Euphrates, of Ever Anahar, the provinces, instructing them to let me travel to Yehuda and take anything that I need. And he gets a signature like that immediately. That's pretty amazing. If you recall, Esther also had to devise a plan to get what she needed from Ahasuerus. But with Esther, it took a little bit longer, right? She had to go a couple of times. It wasn't very simple. Maybe because when she entered to talk to Ahasuerus, he was in king mode, right? Ad chatzia malchut, not going to give you everything. He was thinking straight. He was extremely. Thank you. He was extremely connected, and it doesn't seem like he was having a party. There's no mention of drinks. In fact, Esther wants to get him a little bit drunk so that she can ask for, ask a request. So I guess Jews asking and getting requests from non-Jews, wine is very important. Alcohol is very important because it happened both with Esther and Ahasuerus, and it's happening here as well. Why? Because unfortunately, the way the world works, non-Jews just don't want to help Jewish people, just for no reason. You got to get them a little bit tipsy, a little bit happy, so that they can, grant us our request. Happened with Esther. That's what she did, when she invited Achashverosh and Haman to the little party that she created. I mean, let's face it, the Megillah, Esther doesn't tell us all the information. They weren't just having a nice dinner with a nice round table, sipping some steaks, sipping some alcohol and eating some steaks, while Haman there was and Achashverosh was there. We know what Achashverosh likes. Esther knew exactly what to give her man, right, her king. It was an after party, the same kind of thing that is going on here. That's how you get things out of. That's how she got stuff out of Achashverosh. That's exactly what Nechemia is doing here. Again, it's just my opinion. I can't prove that, but it seems, based on how things are layered and how easy and smooth it runs, that's what we're talking about. And and he really gets it. He gets everything he wants. It's unheard of, I think, that this would happen, that it would be so easy, unless we bring another possibility: is he's just a very trusted minister, and maybe he just loves him that much. But I like the other opinion better. Okay, so he gets what he needs, and Pasuk Chet comes, and besides all of that, besides everything that he besides all of the approvals of the letters going to the governors around, he also asks, because he has to show, even though the king's might be drunk, he's still a very intelligent king. He still has power. He says, "Look, what I need, one more thing, I need to make sure that I have a lot of wood, a lot of trees, because I want to build. I need to build up my hometown." So he goes in Pasuk Chet, ve'igeret el Asaf, shomer hapardes, asher lamelech, asher yiten li eitzim lekarot et sha'arei habira, asher labait, ulchomat ha'ir, ve'labait, asher avo elav. I'm not going to read the last part. I'm just going to translate what I just read. So he says, he asks for another letter. I mean, he's going out on a limb. He's really asking for a lot. He asks for another letter so that the keeper of the royal forests, Shomer HaPardes, because in Persia and Babylon, all forests, all woods belonged to the king, not just his own backyard or the palace, but by definition, all forests belonged to the king. So if anybody wanted any wood anywhere in the kingdom, they had to get explicit permission from the king. He owned it all. Right, that's also part of how he gained money and a fortune. So, what he's asking over here, besides saying, "I want to go to my hometown, I want to build up my hometown, I want to build everything, and I want you to make sure that you send letters to all of the governors, leading all the way down to my hometown." Again, he doesn't say Jerusalem, not even once, and he does that. He says, "Oh, just one more little thing, like one more thing." Right? Those who are Agatha Christie lovers of Columbo, just one more little kind of thing, So he wants one more thing, which is the most important thing. He needs wood. He needs to be able to build up the Chomot of Yerushalayim, right? One more thing. I need that. I need to be able to have timber and wood and everything for the gates of the city, the city walls, and of course the house that I'm going to live in, because I just need to live somewhere, right? And the king, vayiten li hamelech, and the king gave it to me. I mean, really, there's no obstacles. He doesn't have to pay for anything. He doesn't have to promise. It's like this king must be in a high. He must be like drunk and women all over the place, and that's why everything is smooth. He's getting everything that he wants. Vayiten li hamelech. He gave me everything I asked. Kiyad Elohai hatova alai. So if I translated this just one-to-one, word for word, say, because God was with me. So he's also hinting to us. He's saying, it's not really Ardach Shasta that's helping me out here. It's a Kadosh Baruch Hu that's helping me out here. Right? The king did physically give me the letters that I needed in order to acquire and to get all of the wood and the timber that I need to build up the city. But Kiyad Elohai, it's because of Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's really HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because of the prayer, the davening that I did in Parak Aleph. So really, Nechemia is a wonderful Jew, lots of emunah, and he's also very smart, intelligent, and a great politician, knowing exactly when to go and how to go. But I think it's obvious to us, he knows his Bible. He knows Tanakh. He's read the story of Esther. He knows what works with the Persian kings. And he kind of like copied her. And that's why we go back to the Pasuk where it says, because he's basically he learned from Esther and says, you know what, I got to do the same thing to get what I need, and he gets what he wants. And then we skip in Pasuk Tet, we're already catching up to the this is the memories that is being relayed to us by Nechemia himself. And then he says, and I finally got to Yerushalayim, Pasuk Tet, Va'avo el pachavot ever anahar, Va'etena lahem et igrot hamelech, Va'ishlach imi hamelech asarei chayil ufarashim. So the king sent some of his army officers and his troops, his cavalry, right? Parashim, his cavalry, with me, and I made my journey. I started making my journey from Shushan, all the way down south to Eretz Yisrael, and then later on he got to Yerushalayim, and that's where he gave all the different governors the letters that he got from the king, telling them that he must pass and he must get there, and that he's the new emperor of Yerushalayim. But Yerushalayim still wasn't even mentioned. So I'm wondering, had this again goes hand in hand with what I think is really happening here. If Artaxerxes was a little bit more sober, he might have asked, by the way, where do you live? Right? It's a thing that we always like. You meet somebody and say, oh yeah, where do you live? Oh, I come from Modi'in, from the Golan. He doesn't even ask him where it is. He gets away with it. He completely gets away with not saying Yerushalayim even once. Pretty amazing, and that's what brings me to really believe that he's, having the after party of Echad Ben Nisan, which is the eve of the coolest most day. So Lehavdil Alfei Avdalot. Today is Yom Yerushalayim. Our party is all about, like you said, Sarah, about our hearts and emunah and harabayit. This guy's party is all about wine and women. So lehavdil alfei avdalot, am Yisrael chai. Tov. So he does all these things, and he finally gives all the governors the letters, and he's on his way, and then all of a sudden we hear of this person in Pasuk Yud, Vayishma Sanvalat HaChoroni, Vetovia Ha'eved Ha'amoni, Vayera Lahem Ra'a Gedola, Asher Ba Adam Levakesh Tova Livnei Yisrael. Now, when I read this pasuk, I had tears. I hope you have tears too. It is one of the saddest, such a sad pasuk. I'm going to read it again in Hebrew and then I'll translate it, but I want you to read it with me. It's very sad. Vayishma sanvalat ha'choroni, v'tovia ha'eved ha'amoni, vayera lahem ra'a gedola, asher ba adam levakesh tova livnei Yisrael. So if you haven't understood yet, Sanballat from the town of Choron, and Tovia, some kind of official in the province of Ammon, they heard someone is coming to do something good for the people of Israel. And they see it as a terrible thing. Anybody that does something good for a Jew, anybody that does something good, it causes them grief. It causes them ara'ah. Vayera lahem ra'a gedola. Ra'a gedola. They were highly indignant. Highly. Ra'a gedola. This is so sad. It's so sad. They heard Asher ba Adam, that someone came to do something good for Am Yisrael. There are just people like that in the world. There are people like that in the world that they're just, narcissistic. They are, they have such a problem that anybody that does good for someone else, not for them, because that's what's really happening here, we're going to see later, then they tear him down, completely tear him down. It's jealousy. It's a terrible way of living. Someone wants to do good. Someone wants to do good for the people of Israel. They heard. They don't even know what he wants to do. They didn't even meet the guy, but they heard that he wants to do something positive and good. And as we're going to see later on in the next prakim, terrible. These people, it's like such jealousy, such narcissism, it's terrible. Ra'a gedola. Ra'a gedola. It pains them. And that's why these two people, they work tirelessly. They work very hard to block Nechemia and everything that he tries to do. We're going to see he's going to try to build the city walls. He's going to try to do something good for Jerusalem. But these two characters, they want their chair. They want to be able to celebrate their riches, their control, because they control the province of Shomron, which possibly they were also hoping they can control Judea as well, and Yerushalayim. They don't want some guy to come and do something good, because then it takes away from them. Narcissism, right? Mamash. And it pains them. And if you look at the psukim, I think it's one of the saddest psukim in the entire Tanakh. I really do. It's a ra'a gedola because somebody wants to do something good for another Jewish person. It pains me, and I know I'm putting an emphasis on this pasuk, but it should bother us. It should bother us to no ends, because it's not just these two characters. There are people like that in the world, in our midst, people in our government, people, there's always people that are like that. They just need it for themselves. They want to control. They want to be able to take. They want to be able to have their own, and whatever it is. And anybody that does something good, they have to tear them down. And it's just a very, very sad situation, because they didn't even meet Nechemia. It just, they heard. Vayishma. It's enough. God only knows what's going to happen when they finally see. When they suddenly see what he's actually doing. He might do great things. And they might be able to also enjoy that. But no, if it's not them, no one else can do anything. And that's a very, very sad situation to be in. Who are these people? Who is Sanblat? And who is this Tovia? Sanblat, by the way, we'll see later on, and this is another sad issue. Sanblat is some type of in-law to a future Kohen Gadol. So he's not just a foreigner. He becomes part of Mishpacha with a leader, which means that he is in the elites. He's part of the Hanhaga. He's part of the, administration of the Shomron or whatever. And he wants to control, so much so that he wants to control also the Kohen, everything. So of course, when a new guy comes, Nechemia comes, this energetic guy from Persia to come and to do something positive and good, has to be torn down by this character, Sanballat. And who's Tovia ha'eved ha'amoni? So ha'eved ha'amoni suggests not an eved, not a slave, but a slave to the king, meaning he's a servant to the king. When it says here eved, means servant to the king, meaning he is part of the kingdom. He's part of, the Persian Empire. And he too said, I'm part of the empire. I'm not going to have anybody else take my spot. I'm not going to have anybody. I don't care if this person who's going to come to do good, he's not going to take my spot. I'm not going to let him do that. And later on, we see what happens as well. So it's a very, very, very sad puzzle that mirrors a little bit too close to our home, too close to what we some of us might feel sometimes and hear about. It also just shows us a little bit about human nature, which is just sad. Why not just enjoy? Somebody's coming to do something positive. Enjoy it. Just enjoy it. Be part of that positive. Be part of that wonderful change. But it doesn't work that way. Pasuk Yudalef comes in. Va'avol Yerushalayim. So finally he gets to Yerushalayim. First time Yerushalayim is mentioned when he's already far removed from Shushan. So, who knows? The guy, the Tachshas of the king, is probably sobered up by now. Probably he's, doing his own business. But by now, Nechemia is already in Yerushalayim, and there's kind of a disconnect. And he's just waiting for his nice, trusted minister to come back. So he comes to Yerushalayim. Finally, he mentioned Yerushalayim. Up until now, it wasn't mentioned because it wasn't important. Vahisham yamim shlosha. Not 3 days pass. Only for 3 days. He rests for 3 days. Boom, he's a man in action. The next night, the 4th day, va'akum laila, he starts going out to work. He goes out to work. And as we'll see next week, Be'ezrat Hashem, he goes out to work to try to figure out how to rebuild Yerushalayim. But now he already heard and knows. It's not necessarily in the psukim, we'll see that a little bit later, that there are some people that are out to get him. He wants to do good. He wants to do good for the Jewish people. He wants what does he want to do? He wants to build up Yerushalayim. He wants to build it up. He wants to create something special. He wants to bring a little more peace of mind to the people living in Yerushalayim. By the way, not only Jewish people. We're talking about the population. He wants to do something good for the people who come to Yerushalayim. But he knows that there are people that are tripping him up all the time because they want that control. Sanblat Achoroni, which we'll meet a little bit later as well, and we'll see what he does. But we're learning a little bit more of Nechemia. Very, very different than Ezra HaSofer.